I hope you love these budget-friendly fall DIYs. Welcome to the Chic Show. This is Hello Fall, hosted by the Rusted Willow and DIY from House to Home, and guest host today is Lady Red Crafting. I'll have their channels in the description box below, along with the playlist. For project number 1, I'm using this scrap piece of drop cloth, and I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to be making a sort of a bag out of it, so I'm just folding it in half, and then I'm going to use some hot glue to glue 2 of the sides together, leaving the top open. Now I'm going to be taking the bottom corners and I'm going to squeeze them together and fold them, glue them together as shown here. This way we'll have kind of a bottom to our bag where it will sit a little more flat. Now we can flip it inside out. Now that the bag is complete, we can work on the decorations for the outside of it. I'm using another small piece of drop cloth and a piece of burlap. I don't actually end up using this piece of drop cloth, but you'll see that later. I pulled a couple of strings from each side of the burlap so that those edges would fray. Next, I'm using a coffee napkin that I ordered, I think, from Temu, and I'm going to be using a paintbrush and I'm going to dip it in water and just take it around the edges of part of this napkin, and I'm just going to pull those away so that the edges are kind of rough. Once I have torn all the way around the napkin, I'm going to be using fabric Mod Podge, and I'm going to Mod Podge the napkin onto the burlap. I'm working in sections, and then once I get a section Mod Podge down, I'm adding Mod Podge to the top. I'm going to set that aside to dry, and I took that other piece of drop cloth that I didn't use and I cut it down a little bit smaller, and I'm going to be Mod Podging it on top of the napkin. And I did use my Apothecary stamps by IOD, and I stamped on 1 pound. Using that same fabric Mod Podge, I'm going to Mod Podge this whole piece now to the front of our coffee bag. I added a little bead of hot glue to each corner just to hold it in place until the Mod Podge dried. I wanted to dirty up this bag just a little bit, so I used a brown ink pad that I had from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just dabbing it all over the front and the back of the bag. After I had done this, I discovered that there is actually an antique matte Mod Podge, which I think would probably do the same thing. So it's kind of a grungy looking Mod Podge. So I did add that to the top of everything just to give it some extra protection and extra color. Now I'm using some stuffing from an old pillow, and I'm just stuffing that bag full. I am leaving a little bit of room at the top so that I can use some jute twine to tie the bag. For one little added touch, I wanted to use one of these wooden scoops from Hobby Lobby, and I used some antique wax to stain it, and then I tied that to the top of the coffee bag. This is a nice little fall addition to my coffee bar. For project number 2, I'm using this Farm Fresh sign from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be removing the hardware, the ribbons, and the hanger at the top. I'm going to paint the back of this sign, so we're going to cover up the front with just a piece of white butcher paper. I'm using a simple glue stick to glue it on, and then I'm not going to trim it away until after I've actually painted the back side. I'm using this Spice Pumpkin acrylic paint to paint the back side of this sign, and it does take about 3 coats because this sign really soaks it in. Once it's completely painted and dry, I go back with my finger sander and sand off that excess paper. I did use some stamps and tried to stamp on this sign to begin with that you can see there, but I didn't like the way it turned out because I used a brown ink pad and really I needed to use black. So I painted back over it, and you can still see those words a little bit, but that will give me kind of a guide as to where I need to place my stamps. Now I'm using my black ink pad and I'm just tracing it around the edge of the sign to give it some dimension. These are IOD's letterpress stamps, and I'm going to be adding those to the front of this sign. The little embellishment at the top is actually from IOD's Mercantile Stamps, so I'm using that, and then I'm going to be using IOD's Fruitful Bounty stamps. I stamped the smaller pumpkin on first, and then I made a mask for it so that I could stamp the larger pumpkin on to make it look like the larger pumpkin is behind the smaller pumpkin. When using a mask, you want to make sure and place whatever image you want in the front down first, then place your mask over it, and then the image that you want behind it, you'll stamp over that, and you can see here how it doesn't go on top of that smaller pumpkin. It looks like that it is behind it. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of age and speckled looking paint all over this sign by using a white ink pad, and I'm just pressing it, as you can see here, all over the entire sign. I love this sign and the way it turned out. Let me know what you think. For the last project today, I'm going to be using these 2 signs from Dollar Tree. I'm going to remove this banner on this side, and that's the part we're going to use. We'll set this other part aside and use it another time. I'm going to remove the leaf and the bow, and now I'm going to be cutting out a burlap leaf using a smaller leaf as a pattern. I'll cut out a total of 3 leaves. I'm going to be covering the pumpkin with this Dollar Tree wallpaper. It's a peel and stick wallpaper. I'm going to trace around it, and I'll cut just a little bit bigger than the actual pumpkin and then sand off the excess. Once I have the pumpkin cut out, I place it down onto my pumpkin and I peel off that one strip at the bottom so that I can place that part down first, and then it should stay in place and should have no wrinkles. Now for the little banner, I'm using some Waverly chalk paint in ivory, and I'm just going to paint over the entire front side of this sign. And I did this, I probably could have painted the back, but I did it on the front because I thought I would be able to see the lines a little bit better, and that would help me with this next step. So now I'm going to glue on the burlap leaves, and then we'll go back to that little banner. I like the neutral color with this pumpkin, and now we're going to go back and add some dimension to that sign. So I did think to take a picture of the little banner before I painted it so that I would have an idea of where to draw my lines in case I couldn't see them, and it's a good thing I did because I couldn't really see them. So now I'm using some more of IOD's letterpress stamps, and I'm going to stamp on Favorite Season. I'm using a black ink pad from Hobby Lobby to do this. And now I just need to hot glue this sign to the front of our pumpkin. I decided the stem did need a little bit of work, so I filled in the hole at the top with some hot glue, and then I painted the stem. I used Waverly chalk paint in moss to paint the stem, and then I added a little bit of dimension with some Waverly chalk paint in truffle. I wanted to be able to add this sign to my wreath, so I added a hanger to the back so that I could tie it onto my wreath, but can change out my wreath for each season. I decided to go ahead and add that bow back to the top of the pumpkin as well. Once I tied this pumpkin onto my wreath, it was ready to be displayed. I hope I've given you some budget-friendly ideas to spruce up your home for the cozy fall season. Thanks again to our hosts, and be sure and check out their channels as well as the playlist in the description box below. I invite you to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Here's another video I think you might like. Remember to share the chic. Thanks for watching. Bye now.